even know what to think about this book.
Hi, I'm Grace, this is Gracefully, and today we're going to be doing my October What I Read. I'm going to be telling you what I read in October. In October, I didn't actually read a lot of scary, spooky books. I read one like mystical witchy book, and I read like a psychological thriller horror-ish book, but not any like very scary book, because I'm a little scared being myself. Without further ado, let's get into the books I read this month, because I'm like super pumped to tell you about them. So what I wanted to do is tell you about all the books I read in October, starting from the book that I ranked the lowest. And to be fair, lowest is 3 stars. I actually really enjoyed the books I read this month. So the first book that I read this month was The Year We Fell from Space by Amy Saring King, also known as A.S. King, who wrote We Are the Ants, I believe, that became popular a few years ago. And this book is a middle grade, and it is exploring this young girl whose parents have just gotten divorced. And this event is what she describes as the year we fell from space. It explores the year after her parents have been divorced and her kind of emotional reaction, how she feels responsible for others' emotions and how she kind of lashes out in school, and like all these really kind of complex feelings in a really like compact middle grade way. I think it took me like 3 days to read this. Very quick read. I rated this one about 3 stars, not because of any fault of the book itself really, but it's just clear that I'm not the target audience. I think this book is very much just for like 8 to kind of 15-year-olds, especially people who can relate to this experience. But again, it's a really simplistic look at a really complex event that I feel like would be appropriate for maybe a kid going through these events, but not really for anyone else. There were also a few flaws with this book. So this book has like okay metaphors, and I feel like this happens a lot. It's a bit of a symptom of middle grade novels to assume that the audience won't understand a metaphor and has to be really explicit with it, or really like childish and obscure. I feel like this book kind of suffers from that. And then also the style of this book is written, it's quite peculiar. I'll just show you the first initial chapters. But it says like chapter 1, and then it has like the date, and it almost feels like a diary entry, but the actual prose isn't in the style of a diary entry. So I'm like, bitch, what are you trying to say to me? Like, I don't understand who you're talking to. Who's you? Is you me? You like this omniscient being in space? The next book that I wanted to talk about, like the next book that I actually rated like 4.5 stars. So once again, I had a really good reading month, and that one is Daisy Jones and the Six. So this book I have been slack on because people have been telling us, and by us I mean me, for years to read this book, to read Daisy Jones and the Six, because it's amazing, and because who wrote it? Because Taylor Jenkins Reid is just a phenomenal author who just writes these beautiful characters. And I was slacking, but then on my Libby, it popped up to say like the audiobook of Taylor Jenkins Reid, Daisy Jones and the Six is up for ordering. And I was like, well, fuck, I'll read it. It was phenomenal. This is the first audiobook that I've listened to through and through, and I think if you're going to read this book, read it in audio, because it's essentially a collection of interviews about why Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a band, broke up, and about all the intricate things that are happening in this band's life besides the drug, and including the drugs and the alcohol. And it was just so good, and it touches on relationships in such a almost relatable and raw way, and I loved it so much. I did find the reason why it's 4.5 is because there was a few flaws, and I think it could also be a 4. Like, it's not the type of 4.5 that rounds up to a 5. It's the type of 4.5 that rounds down to a 4 if I have to like give it an explicit rating. But the reasons why I like dropped it down is because, one, I feel like it should have been like Daisy Jones and the Three. I think there were too many characters in the band, and I know that it kind of explains it at the end of the book why some characters are more prominent than others. But I just think that, like, there was a guy called Pete in it, and this isn't a spoiler because you get told about him like a few seconds in, but there's a guy called Pete, and he has a girlfriend, and that's all I know about him. That's literally all I know about his character, and he is in the band. And I think that is really lacking on the author's part. Like, this is why it's like a round down to 4 kind of book. And then also the ending, I said the ending is cheesy and made me groan. Because the ending is cheesy and it made me groan. There were no like indications that the ending was gonna happen, I guess. It wasn't really like foreshadowed in the plot. I feel like it was just a fun little oh at the end, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't have a point, and I feel like the book would have been better without it. and I would have felt more satisfied. I just felt the ending was a bit silly, I'll be honest. But I do want a physical edition of this book. I don't think I would enjoy it like reading it physically, but I do want a physical edition just so I can like annotate the lines, because there was like really good explorations of romantic relationships that aren't just like this cliche love story. It was like, I don't want to spoil it, but like read it, listen to it. Like the ending is fine. It's still 4.5 stars. It's still a 4.5 stars. I would suggest picking it up and then talking to me about it. I know a lot of people have read this book. If you have read this book, please comment down below, because I want to chat. I need to chat about this book. It was just so, it made me happy. It made me happy and sad all at the same time. The next book is a book that I still don't understand. I buddy read Boy Parts by Eliza Clark with Kirsty, who I'll link down below. She's a YouTuber. She's phenomenal and amazing and has the best accent. I read this book because I was watching GK Reads, and she said that this book is about a female who takes explicit photos of men. And I just finished reading Normal People, and in that book there is a male who takes explicit photos of women in it, and I thought that dynamic, that power dynamic and that gender dynamic, and like the comment on like can art kind of push these sexual boundaries was really interesting. I thought that was like really intriguing and phenomenal, and something that I really actually wanted to dive deeper into. And if you do have any more books that kind of explore that, please pop them down below, like photography and sexuality and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. Anyway, so that's why I picked this book up. And then the only other thing I will tell you about this book besides that is at, I think it was like 1 a.m. Kirsty's time, probably like midday mine, but 1 a.m. Kirsty's time, she sends through a voice message and it just says, "Grace, what the fuck?" And I would try that in an Irish accent, but I will butcher it, and I don't want to disrespect Kirsty like that. And that's all I'm going to tell you. And it's a solid like 5 out of 5 read, I think. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened in that book, but I would suggest reading it if you want your mind to just go to whoa, you know? Like, I don't even know what to think about this book. And this book is not getting enough kind of popularity around it because it is so good. Read it. Read it, okay? I'll fight you if you don't read it. And then the last book I read this month was a very vast contrast to the fuckery that was Boy Parts, and it was Hollowpox, and that is by Jessica Townsend, who's an Australian like me. So Hollowpox is the 3rd book in the Nevermore series. The Nevermore series essentially follows this girl Morrigan Crow, and she's said to be a bad luck child. As a result of this, on Eventide, she's supposed to die. She's supposed to get like brutally murdered, except in a middle grade way, by these like smoke hounds. And instead of getting brutally murdered, she gets picked up by this guy, Jupiter North, who is this really like whimsical, just very happy and strange, but in like in a fun way. And then she gets taken to Nevermore, which is this like beautiful town with talking animals, magic, this fantastic Christmas celebration, and she wants to stay there, but to stay there she has to complete these trials to get into the Wondrous Society. And that's where the first book takes off, and I'm 3 books deep and I'm loving it. I think this might be my favorite middle grade series apart from my like childhood favorites, you know what I mean? This book explores like the influences of a pandemic and also the kind of discrimination that occurs when the world is faced with these really big giant threats. It also has a smoky, like dark bad guy who is like 120 years old, probably older than that, and he's very attractive. He's an attractive lad who doesn't like berries and cream. And I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. It is so whimsical and just makes me want to just kind of reconnect with that childish side of myself, and I love it. And there's just so many, like, I kind of tabbed all these little parts that I found uber whimsical. There's like this line that says, "Just a scratch. Morrigan had always wanted to say that about an injury that was demonstrably not a scratch. She felt quite pleased with herself having sufficient wits about her when the opportunity arose." It's just so good. And it also explores like themes of found family and like envy relating to family relationships, and also like what is good and evil. And I'm so excited for Silverborn next year. I want it to come like yesterday. It takes like 2 years for her to come out with the next book, and like rightfully so. They're phenomenal. They're really good. But I want Silverborn now. Thank you. So yeah, I read 4 books this month. I actually think that's pretty decent considering I have a lot of uni work due. If you are in any way interested in the books that I'm going to be reading in November, I came up with my Bloom and TBR, which is a month-long readathon hosted by Ali V and Kirsty, and it's like a plant-themed readathon with like 25 prompts, and I'm so excited to read for it. So I do have my TBR linked below, and I hope that you guys all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Please subscribe if you want to see more of my content and more of this crazy, crazy gal. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful week or weekend, whatever time it is where you live. Goodbye!